Hey, I'm your host, Dr. Desiree Cassell. I'm an orthopedic and pelvic floor physical therapist specializing in women's health, aka pelvic floor. I'm a wife, mom of 3, foodie, lover of all things movement and nature, and I'm super passionate about educating, empowering, and supporting other women like you to find and maintain balance throughout all aspects of their lives, without pain, pressure, or peeing their pants. And this is the Balanced Momtality Podcast, where we will talk about all things pelvic floor, your core, and optimizing your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum recovery, providing you with the knowledge and tools so that you can feel like the strong, playful, and happy mom that you and your family deserve. Now let's get you out of those pads and back to loving movement. Fill up your water, pop in those AirPods, roll out your mat, and let's connect. Hey, we are back with another episode this week on the Pelvic Floor, Core, and More show. I hope you guys are having a great start to your week, and this gives you a little Monday motivation. I'm coming off of spring break with my kiddos, so today was hard. It was hard to get out of bed. It was hard for the kids to get out of bed and get to school. It was hard for me to get to the gym, but we did it. We made it to the gym, and yes, it still felt hard at the gym, but I felt so good afterwards. I got a little sauna soak in and got to detox some of that junk that I binged on this last week because my kids and my husband and I had so much fun playing in Albuquerque. We took our kids to a fun little family activity fun center called Hinkle, played some mini golf and go-karts and laser tag, and went to see Super Mario, and so our kids just got spoiled with lots of fun things. And as a birthday present from my husband, he got us tickets to a comedy show, which I have never done before. And friends, if you have never been to a comedy show, let this be your inspiration to try one, because I was laughing all night and it was such a fun way to spend time together. And then we got a little time away from our kids with our kids being at my mother-in-law's, and we did some biking around the bosque, and my skin quickly reminded me that I'm white and I need sunscreen because I was out for only like 30 minutes and I look like a lobster today, which is so fun because I also have a fun tan line across my chest where my bag was hanging on, and I wasn't even in the sun that long. So annoying, but it never fails every year around this time of year when it gets warm, and I'm not quite used to having sunscreen on me yet, and I fry. And aside from that, we only biked like maybe 30-45 minutes. And my butt bones, man, they are sore. You bikers and cyclists out there that are doing hours and hours and miles on bikes all the time, how the heck do you do it? I'm assuming your butt just gets numb, but it has been a minute since I've been on a bike and I can feel it. And I was even on a beach cruiser seat. Like, what is going on? But every time I move or sit, I'm reminded of my sit bones feeling kind of bruised. I'm like, man, you bikers, you either just suffer through pain or you just completely disconnect to that part of your body, or maybe you just compress it so much it becomes numb. I don't know. You guys are a whole other breed over there. But with that being said, last week I was also very snuffly. I had a cold. I also had allergies. And these last few weeks with allergy season, and yes, I live in the 505 in New Mexico. We are high desert, mountain. So many allergies right now. Pollen everywhere. Every plant, every tree, every bush you can think of is pollinating. And so allergy season is crazy right now. And what this usually means this time of year for me as a pelvic floor PT is I get an uptick in flares around leaking. I get an uptick in people calling because they all of a sudden are feeling like they have a problem that needs to be taken care of, right? And so if your leaking gets worse during allergy season and you've been maybe even trying to do more Kegels to fix it, I just want you to know this might actually be making things worse, which is very frustrating, right? If we are trying to do something to help our system and then it ends up making things worse, it's like, well, what the heck? Like, I was trying to actually do good. So I want this episode to be there for you guys so that you don't make things worse, but also so that you can get on top of these symptoms before they are ruling your lives. Because many of us have little leaks from time to time and completely ignore it until things like allergy season come around and your body is making you pay attention, because now you feel like you're leaking all the time because you're sneezing all the time or you're blowing your nose all the time. So there's that moment of impact where you're like, oh, there's another leak. Oh, there's another leak. And finally your brain goes, I don't think this is normal. Maybe I need to get some help with this. And I want you all to understand, no leaking is normal. So even if you're like, oh yeah, I leak with a sneeze every once in a while, or if I have a full bladder and I've sneezed a ton, then I might leak a little bit, still not normal. And what that's telling you is that your body doesn't have much resiliency in it if you are leaking, even when your system's kind of tapped out. You want your system to be strong enough, flexible enough, coordinated enough, and resilient enough that you can sneeze all day and you still don't leak. You can have a full bladder and sneeze and still not leak. That is the goal. And it is very common, we'll say, that when we start leaking, we think, oh, I need to strengthen. I'm weak, right? I'm weak. I need to do Kegels, because that's what everyone thinks I do here as a pelvic floor PT. Unless you've worked with me in any capacity, you probably are aware that that is not how I treat, and that Kegels, while are useful and necessary in the sense that a Kegel is a pelvic floor contraction, it's not always what we need. And many times actually during allergy season, it can be the opposite of what we need. So I want this show to just break that down for you and help you get some tips and strategies during whether it's allergy season, a cold and flu. We're talking about moments where you might feel like a bum, right? Like, I haven't felt good, whether it's a cold or allergies. So you might not be as active. So that's what makes you feel like you haven't done very much. You're a bum. You've been lazy. That's why you're leaking, right? No, my friend. Because if you have been sneezing constantly, blowing your nose, coughing, even things like clearing your throat, or God forbid you're throwing up, these are moments of pressure. It increases your intra-abdominal pressure. And so each sneeze, each cough, each time you clear your throat, that is a increase in that pelvic floor pressure. And especially if we're sneezing, that's a big, massive pressure. But if we have repetitive sneezing, now not only are we putting a massive pressure on the pelvic floor, we're adding repeated stress, aka intensity, like a workout, right? Your pelvic floor is trying to hold and respond to that engagement of pressure, to that increased force coming down. And think about your bicep for a minute. Even though I'm going to clarify, your bicep does not function like your pelvic floor. It is a muscle externally we can see. So we're going to use it for this analogy here. But imagine your bicep, right? You had a weight in your hand, and every time you sneezed, we'll just connect it to that action, even though obviously we're not doing a bicep curl every time we sneeze, but we're getting creative here, okay? So you're holding a weight in your hand. You go to sneeze and your bicep quickly flexes that weight, right? Real quick and fast, because that's how the pelvic floor works during a sneeze or cough. At least that's how it should. It should be able to engage quick and fast, but also still have the flexibility to absorb that pressure from above, and also the coordination that it can absorb that pressure from above. And we're not just shoving everything down on the pelvic floor or locking the pelvic floor and shoving all that pressure into the belly or the back or other spaces where it can just cause pelvic organ prolapse, because it still is going to go down onto your pelvic organs and on your pelvic floor. It just, maybe your pelvic floor isn't flexible enough to move with that pressure. So if we think about every time we sneeze or cough, that weight in your arm is just flexing up, flexing up, flexing up, flexing up. At the end of the day, your arm is going to be dead, right? Like, it's going to be so tired from all of that, even if your body was a quote unquote bum on the couch. So you might not have done a ton of working out, but your pelvic floor has been working out over time when we have situations like chronic coughing or sneezing all the time, blowing our nose, throwing up. So this is why even during early pregnancy, when we're nauseous and vomiting a lot, we can also see leaking, right? Like we're tapping that system out. We've tapped it out with too much pressure down below. And so if we think about a muscle being tapped out, like again, we'll think of this bicep muscle. Imagine it's tight, right? Like now your elbow lives in a flexed, bent state because it's tight, and that is where it knows to live. That's not a very functional arm. Just like a super tight pelvic floor that's been contracting over and over again against your sneezing, once it locks up and is tight and stiff and rigid, it's not a very functional pelvic floor. And if we take those same tight muscles, we add a weight to that tight bicep and say, do a bicep curl. That's an obvious thing to be like, that wouldn't be the right move, right? If our bicep is super locked up and tight, we need to massage it. We need to stretch it. We need to do soft tissue work to open it back up. And then we can strengthen once it's open and lengthened. But we are doing the same thing to our pelvic floor during allergy season when we say, go do Kegels, or when we think, oh, I'm weak, I need to go do Kegels. That's what we're doing. We're just tightening it even more and making it even stiffer and even less coordinated with the system. And so I want you to really just grasp like this key concept of your pelvic floor is already overactive and fatigued. It's already been working out. So adding that contraction just adds more tension and then reduces that dynamic ability to respond. Your pelvic floor doesn't just need to squeeze, my friend. It needs to respond to pressure. And I admit, for a half a second, I was in this thought process last year. And I'm sure I have an episode on allergies around this time last year too, because I did have a little leak. Yes, even pelvic floor therapists, we can have leaks every now and again. We're not all perfect, right? I'm not sitting here doing all of my stuff all the time. So things happen. And again, just like I've mentioned in podcast episodes, just because we see a flare of a symptom, whether it's a leak, pain, urgency, frequency, prolapse, right? Like back pain, hip pain, whatever that little flare moment is, we're not going to punish ourselves. We're not, which again, I did instantly go, what? You're not allowed to leak. And I had to walk myself back a little bit. And I was like, okay, let's just get back on track, because I also was feeling like a bum. I had had bad allergies last year with a sinus infection, wasn't working out very often for a couple weeks that time of year. And I had a big sneezing episode and I leaked a little bit. And then later in the day, I leaked a little more. And I was just like, what the heck? You've been a bum, Desiree. You need to get back to the gym. You're already leaking, right? Like my shame and old thought processing came into my mind, even though I've now been doing this for almost 10 years. I had to pause and be like, wait, that's not the therapist in me talking. That is the stupid ego-driven part of my identity that's talking, right? Because I know better. I know that one, you can't lose a ton of strength in 2 weeks. Like, yes, we can lose some strength, but you're not going to all of a sudden go from like not leaking for 7-8 years and having been working out and strong to taking a couple weeks off and all of a sudden the system crumbles and you're leaking all over the place. Because if that's the case, then you're missing something big in your strengthening and probably in your whole program overall with bringing that resiliency into your system. So I had to pause and be like, wait, the strength in my body that I've created in the last 10 years isn't just going to disappear like that after 2 weeks. And then I had the second thought of, wait, even though I've kind of been a bum on the couch, my pelvic floor has not. My pelvic floor has been working out over time because of all the sneezing and coughing. And so it was just that little switch in my brain to go, oh, I don't need to go back into the gym and start working out like crazy. I mean, yeah, I need to get back into the gym and work out just to stay strong and feel good. But that's not what's going to stop my leaking. And in fact, had I just gone back into the gym, I probably would have kept leaking, if not made the leaking worse. Because it's not just Kegels here that can make things worse. It's the strengthening and over engagement that can make things worse, especially when it's in absence of the other crucial part, which is the flexibility, the length, the mobility, the coordination, which comes with the breath work, the release work, the coordination work. And so all I had to do was have that little reminder of, wait, I actually haven't been doing much, but my pelvic floor has been doing a lot. So Kegels probably aren't the answer. Neither is just going straight into strength training. So I'm going to grab my lacrosse ball, do some deep breath work, get a little release in there. I probably would have used my wand if the ball didn't work. And lo and behold, right after that, literally same day, probably even within 5 minutes of doing that, I was sneezing and I haven't leaked since. So this is just to say, friends, like sometimes the breath work and a little release is all you need, because what is the problem? That's what you need to figure out. Is it that it's truly weak and relaxed and not engaging very well? Because then, yeah, that's where we can say some Kegels, some coordination work with your core, some true core strength training can really help. However, again, majority of the time, pelvic floors, even if they're weak, are not just relaxed. They're usually tight and tense, especially if you've had sneezing and coughing or colds, and especially if you've been stressed. So if you just have the fun double whammy of having a cold or bad allergies and you're stressed, then, my friend, you really need to focus on some breath work right now and go sit on a lacrosse ball and thank me later, okay? Because it really is more of a timing and a coordination issue. And if our pelvic floor, even if it's trying to coordinate in time when it engages and when it relaxes, if it's too stiff and tight, it can't even really relax. It can't even really absorb that shock and force that's coming from below. So then it just acts like you just shove the bladder against a hard wall, and that's why we leak. Instead of that pressure shoving the bladder against a flexible wall that absorbs that force like a trampoline, and then we don't get the squish on the bladder, right? And so we really want a reflexive pelvic floor, which is where that breath work comes in. We're not just constantly tightening our pelvic floor. We're not constantly pre-clenching our pelvic floor all day. Like, this is where we need to let it go more often than not, especially when we're not coughing and sneezing, and make sure you're not just holding chronic tension throughout the day. Because if you're leaking, your body probably is sensing that as a little fear, a little risk. So we just clench and guard to protect and keep from leaking. But unfortunately, that can make things worse. So these are the practical tips that help instead of just doing a bunch of Kegels, okay? So first thing I want to say, the one time and place to do a Kegel around a sneeze, cough, blowing your nose, whatever, is right beforehand. So yeah, you do want to make sure you have that coordination that I'm about to sneeze or cough. My pelvic floor is not only engaging, but you're feeling that lift with your pelvic floor. That lift phase is where you get that pelvic organ support. So we want that lift phase right before the sneeze or cough. We sneeze or cough, then we fully relax our pelvic floor. That's called the knack. That is something you want to be able to do. And so a lot of times it is reflexive. You might not even be thinking about it and it's already doing it. But if you're not sure, just give that half second right before the sneeze or cough to engage, and then make sure you are fully relaxing afterwards. The other thing that can decrease some sneezing and just pressure load down below, some leaking with sneezing, is sneezing up and out. So instead, sneeze up into your elbow, extend your trunk up, because sneezing and coughing tends to pull us forward, create a flexion moment, which is just more pressure down. And again, leaking is just the reality that there was more pressure above than there was below externally at the urethral sphincter. So sometimes even if the pelvic floor is dysfunctional, we can still not leak by just taking away pressure from above, which means if we watch our posture, try and sneeze and cough up and out instead of flexing and curling in, that's going to remove some pressure. And if we're also giving that pelvic floor support with that preactive neck engagement, sometimes that is the difference and we're no longer leaking anymore. But aside from that type of coordination, we also want to definitely make sure that we are giving length and relaxation to the pelvic floor with our coordination work, and that is the breath work, my friends. And if you don't know the breath work, tons of episodes on it, more to come, but just make sure you're really feeling on your inhale. Your pelvic floor should be letting go. All muscles should be relaxed. We're trying to stretch those tight muscles. And many times this is when people start to say, why am I not feeling it as much right now? That's because you're getting tighter. So especially if you've been doing breath work, you've listened to me for a while, you've worked with me for a little bit, you're checking in with your breathing and you're like, man, it feels harder to connect to that today for some reason. It just feels like harder to move. I'm not feeling as much motion. That means you're tight. So this is where we need more breath work, especially in positions like a deep squat, happy baby, child's pose. Really bring that breath deep into your butt, deep into your back, really fill that pelvic bowl and start to observe where it doesn't want to expand. Like not only is it getting there, but like, is it right cheek versus left cheek? That's telling you right is tight, right? Is it front then back? Because that's telling you the back of your pelvic floor is tight. Wherever the breath is going last, that's where you're tight and where we need to get more breath and also more release work. So I mentioned the lacrosse ball. This is another great tool to use. You can sit on it inside of your sit bones. I do use all of these tools inside of Restore. I show you how to do this work because this is the crucial piece that so many people miss. The soft tissue work, the reconnection, the coordination. We're trying to support the space and not just tense it even more. So also just looking at how are you bracing? How are you engaging? Are you not only holding pelvic floor all day, but maybe you're also clenching your abs all day? Let it go. And also know that seasonal symptoms happen, right? Seasonal allergies happen. So sometimes you might have a little flare around allergy season with your leaking or with your urgency and frequency. And that's okay. We're not going to freak out. We're just going to take it as the data that it is, the information that it is, and notice, okay, body, I recognize you're giving me some signs that we're a little tight, a little tapped out. So I'm going to listen to that. I'm not going to add to that by doing Kegels or a ton of strength training. I'm going to soften and balance the system again before we get back into that strength training work. But just know your body is overloaded. It's not failing. It doesn't mean you're broken, right? And yes, this was my spiral. I'm like, how can you leak? You're the pelvic floor PT. This is not okay. And it's like, no, we're all human. We all get busy. We all get caught up. And the fact that you're aware and that you take that time to pause and acknowledge and treat that space versus just being like, oh yeah, another leak. Oh yeah, another leak, and forget about it. That is the healing piece. Because when you forget about it and brush it off, then you do get to seasons like this where all of a sudden it is screaming at you and you can't even leave your house without thinking about a liner or the next bathroom is, okay? And we don't want to be there. So just know there are tools. I do coaching for this all the time. And also inside of Restore, we train your body to handle those real life pressures like this, not just controlled exercises. Your pelvic floor is not failing. It just needs a better strategy, and I'm here for it. So let me know if you have any other issues or if you need any other support through allergy season. Definitely check the show notes below. I have 2 support spaces. One is inside of my Pelvic Floor Core and More app. That is free. Download it. Again, show notes have that information below. Also over on Facebook at the Balanced Momtality Wellness and Support, that is another free space that you can ask questions, get some feedback. I'm here for you. Do not wait till this is controlling your life. And also get on a coaching call one-on-one with me and we can really dive into the nitty-gritty of why your body is flaring up and what it needs during allergy season and beyond. But otherwise, friends, I'm so happy you're here today. I'm happy I can breathe again. I don't sound so nasally today. I'm sorry for last week where I was super congested and definitely going through all of this that I mentioned, although I was not leaking. I will admit though, friends, it was a close call. There were a couple times where I was like, huh, did I? No. Okay, cool. But that was enough reminder for me to get on my ball, do some breath work and stretching, and not just ignore it and be glad I didn't leak. It's like, no, that was my body also saying, you're close. Your system's pretty tapped right now. And had I ignored it, I probably would have leaked. So here's your sign. Don't ignore it. Call me, email me, beat me if you want to reach me, and we'll chat soon. Well, that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day. I know you've got so many other important things going on, but I hope it was helpful and you leave here with some tools to help you in your healing journey. And I just want to ask you, if you have found this helpful, to please leave a review on iTunes. Scroll down to the bottom of my podcast page and leave that 5-star review so it can help other women see this information. And also, if you want to be a part of my community of amazing women trying to balance all the things, great tips and insight and sharing stories and just motivating each other along the way, feel free to join my Facebook group, The Balanced Momtality Wellness and Support. I hope to see you here next time on the Balanced Momtality Podcast.